Now, this evening, as we begin to speak about the components of encouraging our teams, I'd like to start off with something that kind of bleeds over from what I spoke about the last time, and it's this. Leaders do not permit members of their teams to bear failure alone. And that's a big deal because so many people now are so afraid of failure. They don't want to fail. They're afraid of failing. They don't know what other people will think about them if they fail. But the reality is, if we don't fail sometimes, we will never learn what it is that we need to learn to succeed well. Think of a 9-month-old who has older siblings who are running all around while that 9-month-old is just crawling, but trying to follow them. I remember very well when my sister was a baby. I was actually 10 years old, and she tried. She was the fastest little thing on two legs and two hands. She crawled at lightning speed, but eventually she had to learn to walk. And for her to learn to walk, she had to fail at walking often because getting up, trying to balance, having nothing to hold on to, boom, back on the floor. But eventually she learned how to walk. And in fact, she learned how to run, and she was one of the fastest people that I knew who could run. And that is the same way it is with us with our teams. When we have a team member or even perhaps an entire team that has faced failure, we have to be ready to pour that courage into them that allows them to understand that failure is not final, that failure, in fact, catapults them into a much brighter, a much more productive, a much more successful future. And so, as a leader, you cannot afford to allow yourself to be down about a failure of a team member or the failure of your team. You need to look at the possibilities. As leaders, we need to look to see what the positives are. When I was teaching Introduction to Business, one of the things that I always taught my students was that for every horrible economic occurrence in society, someone always profited from it. In fact, one of the things that I reminded them of is that during the Great Depression, back in the 1930s and 40s, there were people jumping out of windows because they lost a lot of money. But there are also people who became rich during that time because they didn't allow what was happening economically to make them afraid. And as a leader, you must allow your team, help your team, part the curtains on what the good things may be in a difficult or a failed situation. Thank you so much. I will ask you to do this. Look at some negative things in your team members' lives and think about where you can part the curtain for positivity to encourage them, pour courage into them so that they can continue to go on and to do so successfully. Have a good night.